¿Qué pasa, YouTube? SixftHax here. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to all the UCL fans. Now, for those of you who may not know who I am and why I'm doing this power rank series, I guess we could call it, for the UCL season 3, is I was actually in the season 1 and season 2 of UCL. While I wasn't able to finish season 1 because of personal life stuff, I was able to come back for season 2 and end up winning season 2 and being the champion, which was pretty awesome. Now, even though I wasn't able to be a part of season 3, I'm still really excited for this season. There's still a lot of awesome coaches and a lot of awesome drafts that have been made so far. Hopefully we can return for season 4, but that is a topic for another time. Now, the great thing about UCL is that it's very unique in the sense that it does drafting live. Most of the time drafts are done like a week or two in advance for the actual live stream to reveal the draft teams, but the UCL actually does them live. I think everybody had about 3 minutes or so to pick any mon or whatever mon they could pick in the specific tier, and then they also draft from Smogon tiers, which is also pretty cool in my opinion. And that's my favorite aspect about the UCL, is that they do their own kind of like drafting system and they do it actually live in the moment, which is pretty awesome. So the great thing about this is that one half of the draft is done on one day and then the other half is done on the second day. So I figured that doing post drafts for both days would be really awesome, because the order in this power ranking could completely change when the drafts are done on the second day, which should be on the 15th of July, tomorrow. So I will be uploading a separate video on that tomorrow on Sunday, hopefully. If not Sunday, then hopefully by Monday, depending on when the draft is done. Regardless though, I'm super excited for this. If you guys do enjoy the video, make sure to hammer arm that thumbs up button down below. Let me know, do you agree with my order? Do you disagree with my order? Do you think I know what I'm talking about? Or do you just think I'm a babbling idiot? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below. Alright, so before I get into the actual power ranking itself, obviously all of these drafts so far are going to have flaws, because there is only 6 Pokemon out of the 12. So I will probably be picking those little flaws out, but don't think I'm just doing it to like be annoying, or think I'm doing it to just kind of nitpick and be very anal about it, essentially. So yeah, obviously no draft so far is perfect, and that's why I said that for all we know, number 8 could jump up to like number 2, number 3, or number 1 could drop all the way down to like number 5 essentially tomorrow when the drafts are actually 100% completed. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into our number 8 ranked team, and that is going to be the Tucson Terrakions, coached by King Nappy 92. Now I feel like I'm gonna get a little bit of gripe for this one, but I'm gonna explain why Nappy's number 8. So while Nappy does have a terrifying breaker in Hoopa Unbound, right now this current aspect of the draft is just very slow. His fastest mon is Flygon, and actually his fastest mons are Flygon, Jirachi, and Entei. But for the most part, Entei is probably going to be running Adam in nature due to it probably just running to run physical sets in general. Jirachi, of course, base 100, and Flygon being base 100 is not really that great either, because faster teams can easily take advantage of that. One thing though that I do love about Nappy's draft is that he solidified himself having 2 phenomenal stealth rockers in Jirachi and Tyranitar. Those 2 mons can just about always get up stealth rocks in any match, and that's amazing. He also was able to pick up a pretty decent spiker in the form of Chestnut, which is amazing because Pokemon like Hoopa, Entei, and Flygon all appreciate not only having rocks up, but also having up just that one little spike for that extra bit of chip damage so they can ensure 2 KOs and potential OHKOs and sweep late game, which is amazing. Another big issue with this draft, in my opinion, is that he has so many 4 times weak Pokemon. Hoopa Unbound is weak to U-turn, so anything with U-turn is an automatic check to Hoopa if it's faster. Tyranitar is weak to fighting type moves, which, while not as common as potential bug moves or U-turn in general, I should say, is still kind of annoying for it to deal with. Flygon is weak to ice type moves, and Chestnut is weak to flying type moves. Now there is a cool aspect about this though, that even though yes he does have so many 4 times weak Pokemon, sometimes Pokemon that want to try and hit his entire draft are going to have to choose, do we want HP Ice to hit Flygon, or do you want HP Flying to hit something like Chestnut even harder? But at the same time, HP Flying hits Chestnut for super effective damage as well. So that does kind of suck. Also, personally, I am not a big fan of Entei, and I know somebody's going to be upset about that, but since Generation 6, Entei has kind of fallen off in 7th Gen Draft League format. And a big thing about it too is that with the burn nerf now only doing 6% damage instead of 12% damage, Entei's Sacred Fire burns are necessarily as great as before. Yet the 50% chance is still good. It's just that it's not going to be doing that extra little bit of chip damage that can really solidify certain KOs or OKOs and stuff. KOs and 2 KOs is what I meant to say. Or just being able to wear down walls as effectively in general. Plus, Entei is very one-dimensional. For the most part, you are going to want to be running a physical set with it. There are some creative sets, but I don't want to mention them because Nappy could have some of those in mind. But for the most part, the draft I definitely think could benefit from some more speed. Like some speed on this would be really nice, and maybe a rapid spinner, because if he does ever want to bring spikes and rocks, his only removal is Flygon, and that could be a little bit detrimental if he does want to get rid of hazards on his field. But he already has spikes and rocks on his opponent's side of the field. So interested to see what Nappy picks up for his last 6 mons here. So moving on to our 7th ranked team here, we got the Carolina Keldios, coached by Jay, YouTube Gamer. Shouts out to Jay here representing North Carolina for me and him as well. Hopefully he does go far and can win it all. You have my support, Jay. So a big thing about Jay's team is that it's so fat. It's literally beyond bulky at this point. Like, if he just wanted to pick 6 offensive threats from this moment on, then it would still be fine, because he still has a disgusting wall core between Toxapex, Cresselia, and Porygon 2. That is nasty to deal with, and I know for a fact that's going to be a huge pain to try to prepare for when teams are prepping for Jay's squad here, because those 3 mons are ridiculously bulky, and if you over prep for one and he doesn't bring it, then that's something that Jay can take advantage of. So that's very terrifying from Jay's squad. The only real issue I have with this squad, and why I put it at number 7, is that while yes, he does have a very fat wall core, 2/3 of his wall core can easily be used for setup bait. While Toxapex does get access to haze, if something has taunt, then it can stop it from hazing, and then that taunt mon can set up on Toxapex, which could be very problematic. And another problem is that he doesn't really have very good breakers. Like, yeah, Blacephalon does have a ridiculously high special attack stat, but any water type or potentially something like Tyranitar or Snorlax, they just come in, and then what does Blacephalon do to those mons that it can't hit? Or if something is very bulky on the especially defensive side, if Blacephalon can't hurt that much at all, then it's not really going to be doing too much else. Choice spec sets are pretty cool, and then also something like Choice Scarf would be very awesome. It does get access to Calm Mind, which could make it into a type of breaker, but Blacephalon is just way too frail, and much like Garchomp, there's not really many scenarios where it's going to be able to get off that boosting move, so it can come in and be a breaker essentially. And Garchomp, while being very versatile, I've used Garchomp before in the past, and I absolutely love it. I think it's definitely one of the best Draft League mons in general, so I will give him kudos for that one. Garchomp is very fast, gets access to rocks, can run defensive and offensive sets, Scarf, Banded, Specs even could be really cool. Expert Belt would be a very interesting set, but much like Blacephalon, unless it sets up, it's not really going to be hitting entirely too hard. But I'm interested to see what Jay does draft with his next 6 mons. I'm hoping he can actually pick up something that can take advantage of Slurpuff's Sticky Webs, because in Ultra Sun and Moon, Slurpuff did get access to Sticky Webs, which is really awesome, and that could very well come in handy for potentially a like Adamant Garchomp or like a modest Blacephalon. That's actually something I'm really interested to see. Not to mention that he also has 2 very great Trick Room users in Porygon 2 and Cresselia. So in a sense, Jay's draft could form into a type of draft where it just takes advantage of the speed tiers. He's going to command those speed tiers. He's going to make his opponent have to deal with either sticky webs or potentially trick room, and if they prep incorrectly, then that could be very detrimental to them, and then Jay can take advantage of that. And I think that's actually a pretty cool aspect of this draft. While it is very fat, it can control speed tiers. It does have potential to be very aggressive at this point because of just how bulky Porygon 2, Cresselia, and Toxapex are together. But setup sweepers are a little bit annoying, and opposing very bulky teams may not be able to be easily broken by Jay's draft. Moving on to our rank 6 team here, we got PK, coach of the Philadelphia Feraligators, and his draft is pretty fun. Like the aspect of PK's draft that I really like is that he has two very amazing hazard removals in Rotom and Landorus, and the number one thing Dragonite absolutely loves is being able to come in with multi-scale and just set up and then sweep. And that's amazing because in those scenarios, if you're gonna try and break the multi-scale, Dragonite could have something like a weakness policy. So you just boosted its physical and special attack, and it probably just Dragon Dance on you. So that's +1 speed, +3 physical attack Dragonite that you need to stop. And for the most part, there's not many things that stop a +3 attack Dragonite that I can name off the top of my head. So that's really good. That's the main thing I kind of like about PK's draft, is that he picked his 3 OU Pokemon very, very well, and they really kind of help each other out because between Landorus and Rotom Wash, he's got an amazing Volt Turn core. Landorus is easily top 3 best draft league Pokemon, that this thing can do so many different things, and I'm really interested to see how PK is going to use Landorus, because there's no real way that you can use Landorus incorrectly. Like it's very easy to use. You either set up or you scarf it. You could potentially band it. I guess you could bring something creative like Calm Mind. Like there's so many different things that you can do with Landorus that you can just about never go wrong with it. And then Rotom Wash is a Rotom Wash. It pivots, it volt switches, it's just a general nuisance, and it can be a giant pain to a lot of squads that are not properly prepared for it or that don't have a good grass type to be able to stop it. So moving on to the RU picks of PK here, I absolutely love Registeel. Registeel was on my Season 2 championship team, so I know exactly what Registeel can do. Registeel is ridiculously bulky. If this thing had any form of recovery, I guarantee you it would be UU or arguably OU potentially. Like it is at times a little bit passive, but the main thing that you want to use Registeel for is as a defensive wall and guaranteeing always being able to get up Stealth Rocks. Also, it gets access to Curse, so it could function potentially as a setup sweeper, which is really cool. Much like Nappy, PK here solidified himself 2 amazing Stealth Rockers in Landorus and Registeel. Registeel probably is going to have rocks more than Landorus just because Landorus mainly does like being able to set up to try to come in and break or sweep, which is amazing. Feraligatr and Virizion are a pretty good offensive fire, water, grass course so far. Like I'm interested to see what fire type he does pick up, even though yes, he does have Rotom and Feraligatr. They do 2 completely different things. Rotom is a bulky pivot. Gator comes in, Dragon Dances, Sword Dances, I guess maybe Choice Spec Scalds. I don't know what PK can run. PK can run anything, but Feraligatr comes in, it sets up, it breaks. He's got 3 really good breakers between Gator, D-Knight, and Landorus that his opponents are going to have to try to prepare for. And then finally off, Virizion is amazing for the fact that it's not only very bulky, but it can also be a pretty good setup mon. Gets access to Calm Mind and Sword Dance. Depending on what Z crystals he runs, then one of those 4 setup mons is going to be absurdly terrifying. This is kind of like the complete opposite of Jay's draft in a sense, where Jay has a lot of fat bulk, no real good setup. PK has a lot of offensive mons, a lot of setup, but little to no bulk. So I'm interested to see what kind of walls PK wants to pick up from his UU and NU picks. So moving on to team number 5 here, we got Twit from the Grand Canyon Greninjas, which first off, Kieran Black plus Tapu Fini. Ooh, mwah. Phenomenal core. Absolutely love that core. The great thing about it too is that even though yeah, Kieran Black is going to be hindered in the Misty Terrain, not being able to use its Dragon Stab as effectively. It's very rare that you bring Dragon Stab with Kieran Black in the first place, and then it's only about 4 turns that terrain is even going to be up, so it's not going to be up the entire time, and then once that terrain is gone, Kieran Black can spam both stabs. But if Kieran Black is paired up with the Izium Z Crystal, which I'm not sure what Z Crystal he does want to get, but with the Izium Z Crystal, Freeze Shock turns, I believe, into a 200 base stab Z move, and that's literally just a nuke. Kieran Black, much like Lander, is top 5 best Draft League Pokemon, I think, in my opinion. Kieran Black's main job is to come in, break things, and then other stuff comes in to set up, and that's a awesome part of Twit's draft so far. Kieran Black comes in, breaks down his opponent's walls, then he's got SD Scizor, he's got setup Necrozma, and even potentially Swords Dance Drapion to come in, just set up, take advantage of those weakened walls, and then just go to town. My only issue with this draft is that while he is very slow and he was able to pick up Sticky Webs, his only removal is Defog. So much like Nappy's draft, if he wants to get up his hazards and he tries to remove hazards from his side of the field, then he's going to end up removing his opponent's hazards while also getting rid of the Sticky Webs he set up on their side of the field. So that's where I feel that this draft kind of falls apart. Not falls apart, sorry, but that's why I feel like this draft is number 5. While it does have a lot of good offensive prowess and Sticky Webs can be amazing on the set, it's just that its removal is not really the best if you are going to be relying on Sticky Webs. So maybe a Rapid Spinner or some more type of speed, I think, would really benefit this draft. Tapu Fini, in my opinion, is one of the better Finis in the draft format. Tapu Koko, Tapu Fini, Tapu Bulu would be my personal order, but Fini does its job amazingly. It's here to switch in, take hits, get rid of hazards. It got 2 amazing new moves in Ultra Sun and Moon, being able to get Knockoff and Icy Wind. Icy Wind actually is really nice for speed control, and Knockoff is good to get rid of items. And then, can I just say, RU Necrozma is literally a steal. Like, that's a bank robbery right there in RU, and the fact that he got it round 2 in RU is even more surprising, because I probably would have picked Necrozma out of RU round 1, because in regular drafting tiers, Necrozma is easily like tier 2 essentially. Like, Necrozma is really amazing. I hope that Twit here ends up using Necrozma very well, because if his opponents don't have a dark type or a bulky enough steel type, then mono attacking double dance Necrozma just comes in and sets up, and because of its ability, it can also run a very effective weakness policy set. So I'm interested to see just how Twit's gonna use his Necrozma. Drapion being able to have T-Spikes is also really nice. However though, T-Spikes don't work if the Misty Terrain is up, so I want to see how he's going to try and work around that. But for the most part, Twit's draft so far is pretty solid. Really want to see what he's going to pick up for his last 6 mons here. And moving on to ranked number 4 team, the ranked number 4 team, I should say, is Shady Penguin and his New York Mankeys. Now, I was actually really struggling between putting Shady or Twit at number 4, and ultimately I went with Shady at number 4, mainly because it's a little bit faster and also has that nice bit of bulk, while also being able to prove to be a offensively scary team. Now, the main thing that I don't like about this draft, or so far I should say, is that Cloyster kind of seems a little bit out of place. Like, I think during the live stream he even said that he wished that he had picked something else, but Cloyster still has its merits. Like, being able to get up spikes and being able to be a hazard removal is really good, but he already has 2 defoggers in Megalodios, this is Megalodios, and then Tornadus as well. Although I guess he doesn't always want to have to bring defog on both of them, he does have an option to rapid spin with the Cloyster. He's got 2 amazing stealth rockers in Nidoqueen and Heatran, guaranteed. If he didn't pick up another stealth rocker at all, it would be no hindrance to this draft. Being able to always get up stealth rocks is amazing. Latios, in my opinion, Mega Latios is probably the best Mega, honestly, in draft format. So to see him pick it up round 1 is by all means no surprise to me. Mega Latios is absurd in the sense that it can just so easily set up, and much like Necrozma, if your opponent doesn't have a good dark type or a good steel type, then mono attacking Latios can come in. And if you're thinking, oh well, why can't you just toxic it? It gets refresh. Mega Latios can run refresh, roost, calm mind, stored power, and it just wins. Like, what are you going to do? If you don't have a dark type, what are you going to do? Like, I hope every team here drafts a dark type just for Mega Latios, because this thing is absurdly broken if you don't have a dark type. Heatran, while it's not really one of my personal favorite draft league mons, it's still pretty good for what it does. It can be offensive, it can run some surprising sets, and it does hit pretty hard, honestly, coming off of its special attack stat. Not to mention that the Magma Storm trapping set can be an absolute nightmare for any type of wall that is not able to beat it, and that's a really great thing about Heatran on this type of team, is that if Shady does run a Magma Storm on Heatran and he traps that one specific mon that he needs to get rid of for something like Latios to come in to sweep, or Cloyster, or even Shaman to come in to sweep, then once that mon is gone because of Magma Storm trapping them, he just wins essentially. Like, Latios then comes in, Calm Minds, or Cloyster comes in and Shell Smashes, or Shaman just comes in and spams Seed Flare. Now Shaman, another really awesome mon, one of my personal favorite grass types actually. Now, while it does kind of suck having to rely on Seed Flare, when Seed Flare does hit, it does damage. Even though it only does have a base 100 special attack stat, it does so much ridiculous damage. It's insane actually. And then there's a 40% chance to get the Spadef drop. Shaman and just in general is an amazing mon. It can be bulky, it can be offensive, it can be a pivot, it can do so many different things. And speaking of those many different things, Tornadus Therian, probably arguably top 10, at least top 13 mons in draft format this generation. The only real downside is that it has to rely on Hurricane, and if Shady can land his Hurricanes, Tornadus will definitely be an MVP of this squad. He does kind of have a bit of an ice weakness, but between Heatran and Cloyster and his other potential picks, I think he can definitely solidify not being weak to those types. A dark type on his squad also would be really nice, but again, all these squads do have their own little weaknesses, but for the most part, I do like Shady's draft. I'm hoping that his final picks can round it off, and I can really see this moving up to like number 2, maybe even number 1, depending on his final picks. So moving on to our third ranked team, we have my boy Nexus, aka coach of the Pittsburgh Pichus. Now, this was really hard. I wanted to put this second, but comparing this to the second ranked team, I realized that Nexus's squad is a little bit one-dimensional. Now, while that does kind of seem bad, it's not really that big of a problem, because if you look at his squad, Tapu Koko, Mega Lopunny, and Victini, those three together can absolutely destroy just about any wall core. Because Victini can either be physical, it can be mixed, it can run banded, potentially even specs. Tapu Koko, easily top 2 best draft league mons, can have access to Nature Madness and Taunt. So you Nature's Madness a wall, taunt it to prevent it from recovering, and then at that point, if that wall stays at 50%, the Mega Lopunny or Victini can come in and take advantage of it. Tapu Koko also with Z moves is amazing depending on which one Nexus wants to draft with in electric terrain. If your opponent does not have a ground type or a electric Pokemon that has like Lightning Rod, Volt Absorb, or a Motor Drive or something like that, then Specs Tapu Koko hits ridiculously hard. Like, it's insane just how powerful Tapu Koko can be with a choice specs. It can be mixed, which is amazing on this draft, especially because again, some mons here are very one-dimensional, like Mega Lopunny, Serena, Snorlax, and Zydog. Those 4 mons are kind of one-dimensional. Snorlax just about always will be a wall with either Gluttony, Recycle, or potentially Rest Talk. Serena only really has physical moves to take advantage of, so we can't really expect a special set. Its speed also is not that great, and then Zydog, while 1000 Arrows is a really spammable move, it's just about probably always going to be banded. A setup variant of Zydog though can be very scary, and then Mega Lopunny is a Mega Lopunny. We all know what Mega Lopunny does. It comes in, fakes out high jump kicks and or just returns. So while those Mons are not very versatile, Victini and Tapu Koko being able to be those mixed offensive breakers, I think is something that really puts this draft a little bit above all the ones below it, because again, while it's one-dimensional, his offensive core is just so good that it doesn't really matter that his other Mons just kind of do one thing, because they do that one thing so well that they themselves can then take advantage of all the weakened Mons that Koko, Lop, and Teeny were able to weaken or just get rid of. And then because Victini and Tapu Koko hit so ridiculously hard, something like a Choice Bandit Extreme Speed Zydog can come in and clean up. Now, a big thing about this draft though is that if he really does want to go kind of like this route that he's going with, I really feel like that's going to end up hindering the draft. In all honesty, like, he should probably want to get some more versatile Mons that can do more than one different thing, and I think that would definitely make this draft go up to like number 2 for sure, because right now as it is really good, one-dimensional, but his offensive core is so good that there's not really much that he could do about it. But he can definitely pick up some more versatile stuff down the line. Maybe a Pursuit Trapper for low punny and E-Speed Spam would be really good. I'm not too big of a fan of the double normal types because that does kind of give him a little bit of a fighty weakness. He also does have a bit of a ground weakness, but he can still always pick up a flying type, potentially even a bug type. Who knows? We will have to see with his final picks. But for the most part, this draft I really do like. So moving on to our second ranked team here, we have the Heated Mo's Toronto Togekiss. Now this, in my opinion, is easily the most like balanced draft. Now at first glimpse, you will see that his offensive threats are Charizard and Kartana. Like, those two Mons are most likely always going to be offensive threats, and then he's got bulk in Mew, Milotic, Donphan, and Florges. However though, in Draft League format, this is the real great thing about it too, is that Mons like Milotic and Donphan, not only can they be defensive, but they can also be offensive. I've used offensive Donphan a couple times when I had it drafted in GBA D-League Season 3, and offensive Donphan is actually so terrifying to deal with because most of the time your opponents are going to be expecting a defensive Donphan. So if they're not prepared for offensive Donphan or offensive Milotic, then that's easily something that Mo can take advantage of. Florges also gets access to Calm Mind, which is really nice, and it does have a ridiculously high special defense stat, so even just a regular defensive set is really good. And then Mew is the literal definition of versatility. This thing can do whatever it wants, whatever Mo needs it to do, Mew will do. He needs a setup sweeper one match, okay, it's set up. He needs a wall the next match, alright, it's a wall. He needs a pivot, it can be a pivot. If he wants transform on it, he can have transform to scout. Like, there's no limit to what Mew can do except for what you, the person using it, limits it to. And while Kartana is really his only one-dimensional Mon, something like Charizard X, while perceived as an offensive threat, Zard X really has a lot of good bulk. Like, Zard X is pretty bulky, honestly, and Mo did a great job of ensuring that his opponents will probably never be able to keep up hazards, because Donphan is probably the best rapid spinner in Draft League format, easily top 5 best spinners in format. Then Florges getting access to Defog in Ultra Sun and Moon also guarantees it being able to get rid of Stealth Rocks. Kartana even learns Defog if he really wanted to run it, and then of course Mew gets access to Defog as well. So it's gonna be a very hard job for Mo's opponents to try and get up Stealth Rock so they can ensure that 50% off on Charizard before it megas, or just trying to get up hazards on Mo in general. Like, as I said, this is probably the most balanced draft in the sense that he does have very good walls and good offensive Mons, but at the same time, his walls can be offensive and his offensive Mons can be walls as well. So I really believe Mo's draft is going to end up top 2. Like, there's no real way I think he could go wrong with being able to put this draft in a bad position, because right now it's already just coming along so well. The only other draft above this is our ranked 1 draft, and that is going to be Sacred Fire Negro's Chicago Buffalons, if I'm not mistaken. And this is actually really surprising to me because if I'm not mistaken, I believe Nick here is the least experienced in competitive play and draft league format, obviously. But right now, his draft is very, very terrifying. Like, first off, Celesteela plus Megalodios, that is ridiculous. That's the beginning of a terrifying Fairy Steel Dragon core. Right now, Twits, Kieran Black, Tapu Fini, and Scizor is in the lead, but depending on what fairy type Nick gets, he could easily steal the core #1 spot from Twit. Like Celesteela, much like Tapu Koko, top 2 best draft league mons in my opinion. You can't go wrong with Celesteela. For the most part, people think it's just fat and defensive, but then you realize that this thing is so bulky, this thing is so fat, it gets access to shift gear, doubling its speed, making it faster than anything that's not scarfed, I believe, below like base 105, if I'm not mistaken, like below 105 or like 106. If something is not scarfed that's faster than 105 speed, then actually, is it 105? I want to say it's like 103 base speed or below scarfers don't outspeed a max speed Celesteela at +2 is what I'm trying to say. And that in itself is ridiculous because Celesteela will just about always be able to set up. This thing can come in, chew a hit, shift gear, and then next thing you know, you're getting swept by something that you initially thought was going to be Leech Seed, Protect, Substitute, or whatever. And you're getting swept because it gets access to fire moves. It has great stab and heavy slam and flash cannon. It gets air slash, it gets earthquake. Like, there's so many more things that Celesteela can do besides just be defensive. Then Megalodios, another just really amazing mega. Physical DD Megalodios is something that I think people are gonna have to prepare for, because if Nick does bring that and they're not prepared for it, then it can just come in, set up, and sweep. And then Manaphy to top off his OU picks is actually pretty solid, because if you look at the rest of his team, he does kind of have a bit of an ice weakness, but Manaphy doesn't give a damn about any ice type moves. Celesteela sure doesn't care either, even though it is neutral to it. And then Meloetta, being so ridiculously bulky on the Spadef side, is able to just eat any type of ice beam hit essentially. And the wall core of Gligar and Roserade is also really solid. Like, that in itself is a pretty good hazard stacking core. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Gligar. If anything, I probably would have waited out to get Gliscor and UU, but who knows? I'm sure that Nick does have a plan for what he's going to get in UU and NU, but if I was him and he didn't want anything specifically from UU, I probably would have waited for Gliscor. But Gligar is still pretty solid. Like, it's very bulky. It's also just very, very annoying to deal with, because if you don't have an ice type move, or if you don't have knockoff and then you can hit it with something 2 times super effective, then Gligar is going to be very, very annoying to deal with. Not to mention that if he does want to go off the wall, Gligar gets access to Swords Dance and Agility, which is really cool, because maybe like a double dance Gligar set could come. Actually, that'd be pretty awesome. But Gligar plus Roserade, very great hazard stacking core. He did solidify the fact that he now has a poison type, so T-Spikes aren't going to be a problem to anything else that he drafts. Plus, his team doesn't really look initially weak to anything right off the bat. Maybe like a dark type would be really nice, and then maybe like a fire type obviously is something that he should pick up. But besides like the ice weakness, where Manaphy and Celesteela plus Meloetta really don't care about them, there's not really too much wrong with this draft. And I think unless he drafts just very, very poorly from UU and NU, there's nothing, much like Mo's draft, that's really going to hurt this draft. But again, for all we know, Nappy could like pick some ringers or some steals, some hidden gems, and that'll boost them to #1, and then Mo and Nick here could drop to like 4 or 5 depending on what else is being picked. But for right now, guys, that is going to be the power rankings for the first half of the UCL Season 3. Of course, tomorrow we will have the entire drafts, and I will be doing a different draft video on that as well. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this. I will be trying to improve these as I go. Let me know what I could potentially work on, and if you did enjoy this, hammer arm that thumbs up button down below. Let me know what your order is in the comment section below. And with that being said, I will see you all tomorrow. So later, everybody. Thank you all for watching.
No matter where you're at, I'm not here to make friends, it's time to attack and deplete your HP with a final smash. Don't make me turn around and pull a 6 foot hacks. 6 foot SixftHax, hacks.
Yeah.
6 foot, 6 foot hacks, hacks.
Yeah.
6 foot, 6 foot hacks, hacks.